Greetings. I see you've made your way past enemy lines to the Dark Outpost. Welcome, Patriots. I'm David Zublik, your host on this excursion to the darkest outposts of the human mind and beyond. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate it. We are here a little bit early today, an hour early, actually. We're still going to get the complete 4 hours in, but we were asked by one of our guests if we could rearrange our schedule a little bit to accommodate the appearance. And we do that for our guests, and we appreciate it. So we appreciate you. And if for some reason you don't find out about this until a little bit later on and say, oh, what happened here? I didn't know the show was already underway. You can always catch the first hour to an hour and a half of the program archived on BitChute and Rumble. If you missed the entire show, you can catch the whole show archived on our premium site, darkoutpost.tv. And if you become a member at darkoutpost.tv, we've got some special nifty gifties for you. We'll tell you about that a little bit later on. We have Jesse Sabota of Illuminate the Darkness coming up in just a moment to talk about the Council of 13. What is the Council of 13? It's a group of individuals that rule the world, and they're here to usher in the New World Order. Fritz Springmeier was the individual who first brought the Council of 13 to our attention in a book that he wrote, and we're going to be making that book available to you absolutely free, and we'll tell you how you can get a copy of, well, it's absolutely free if you become a Dark Outpost Inner Circle member. It's going to be part of the gift package that we have for you. You're going to find out about that a little bit later on in the show. And then, of course, Peter Kirby, author of Chemtrails Exposed, the New Manhattan Project, will be joining us to continue his deep dive into the chemtrail agenda. That's what's coming up for us. We may even get some phone calls in a little bit later on in the broadcast. Before we do any of that, let's do as we do each and every day and honor our nation and its flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Now, I have a question for you. How's your summer going? Is it hot enough for you? How many times do we hear that, right? During, is it hot enough for you? You know, it's like, especially if you're out there sweating your tail off, you know. These are the hottest temperatures on record in many parts of the country right now. And that, of course, means your air conditioning bill is about to go up. Now, this summer, your bill could be even higher than usual because of the increased cost for materials and supplies from across the board, which is why I am highly recommending a great product called Easy Summer Cool. Let me show you a picture of this thing. I think you're going to find this just absolutely fascinating. Let me just put this up on the screen here for you. Easy Summer Cool is a cooling fan and an air conditioner in one. It's an amazing 4-in-1 portable air conditioning unit. Easy to use. Now, I keep mine on every day right here in the studio, and it makes this room very, very comfortable. Now, anyone who wants to save on their power bill should have one in their room. Now, you can learn more by going to easysummercool.com. That's easysummercool.com. You can save 50% off if you order yours today. Once again, head on over to easysummercool.com. You will not be disappointed. All right. Joining us now is Jesse Sabota of Illuminate the Darkness, and we are absolutely delighted that she's back with us. And as I was happy to announce at the beginning of the show, we're here an hour earlier today because it helps Jesse out, and we'll do anything for Jesse. And so, Jesse, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, good, David. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you feeling? I know that your health is okay?
At the moment.
Okay, well, we're keeping you in our thoughts and prayers as always. We love you. Everybody loves you. Well, let's begin with this, and this is an event that you wanted to talk about. I've got the poster here I'd like to pop up on the screen. Something coming up called Fear into Faith Live. Tell us about it.
Yeah, if people want to find out more, we did some shows with Right on Radio and Summer Day. But this is a great opportunity for people to get involved, especially if you're living in the state of Texas. It's going to be in San Antonio on the 10th and the 11th, coming up this next weekend. And all of the speakers, I guess I can't say all of them, several of the speakers there are women who work in the Texas area and are out on the streets. They're ministering to those who are being trafficked. They're trying to help these women come out of the, actually, I'll say it's women and children, because some of these women get pregnant, or there's children that are born to them who are born into this trafficking. So these ladies are working to get them into recovery homes and get them off the street and get them out of the life of trafficking. So if you can get involved, please feel free to come by and get your tickets. If you can help sponsor, one of the other things that they're doing is they really want this Fear into Faith conference to be a time of ministry to these women who have been trafficked, and just bringing along others who can support those ladies. So if you can help sponsor a trafficked woman to be able to come, you can contact Summer at, I think her site is DEY.com.
Okay.
And she's the first one shown there in the picture. But if you contact her and are interested in sponsorship, they are looking for sponsors. Their goal is to have 100 women, survivors who are there, and just really pour out love on them and minister to them. So,
do you happen to know how much a sponsorship is for this, or if somebody wants to participate?
I'm not sure. I think that they're taking different types of sponsorships. So I know some individuals I've referred are just sponsoring to pay like for the hotel room for the weekend, or some are paying the whole price. I'm not sure how much they're having for the survivors coming.
Okay.
I believe just for regular women attending, I'm estimating, I think it's about $150 per ticket for just regular individuals coming. But they've had lots of programs. If you contact Summer, if you can't afford that whole amount, she's been giving out discount codes, and has some other people who have sponsored if individuals just want to come.
So, for example, if I wanted to sponsor one woman who wanted to come to see this at $150, I could contact Summer and say, "Hey, I'll pay for her ticket."
Yeah, you
okay.
can. Yeah.
Maybe we'll just do that. I think we'll just do that. And there's fearintofaith.com is the website if you want to learn more information. And it's July the 10th and 11th, which is not this weekend, but the following weekend. So are you going to be there?
I am. I'll be one of the speakers there, and we're going to be bringing our anointing oil. We've got some of our prayer team coming. So we'll be ministering through prayer and healing and deliverance for these women. So.
Very good. Well, I will be in touch with Summer. If you'll email me her that email address that you mentioned after the show, I want to help out if I can. Okay, we'll just something.
Yeah, definitely. I'll email you her straight email. So
that'd be great. That'd be fantastic. Thank you. All right. Well, that's coming up, and we'll mention it again before we're concluded here today. I wanted to begin with something. I happened to be listening to another radio show the other day, and I heard a gentleman come on the program, and he talked about something that I had. Oh, thank you. Just sent it to me. Heard about in the past, but I never really talked about it with you, and it kind of went to the back of my mind. And then when he reiterated this, I said, I got to run this by Jesse. And that is this concept that there is a group of individuals, 13 individuals, one of which is not human, we'll get to that in a moment, who really basically are trying to usher in the new world order. They're basically trying to rule the world. They set economic policy. They set just about everything that goes on. And they meet in different locations throughout the world, including my understanding is Washington, D.C., and they meet in the basement of the White House. And it's a group of, there's 12 people seated at this table, okay, and then there's an empty chair for the 13th spot, which is supposed to be reserved for Satan, who is the leader, I guess, of the Council of 13. And when my understanding is one of the people is Henry Kissinger. That's what, or was. Maybe he's not anymore. But maybe the membership changes from time to time, or they switch things around a little bit. But I said, wow, I've got to talk to Jesse about that, because I know with your experience with the Luciferians and the Satanists and all this kind of stuff, you must have heard of that. And so, and there was a gentleman by the name of Fritz Springmeier who actually wrote a book about this. I just, it's fascinating. I wanted to get your take on it and tell me, what is the Council of 13?
Yeah, I have gotten to talk with Fritz and stuff. So we've talked about some of that and a lot of other stuff with the history of the family bloodlines and things like that. From what I understand, I've kind of broken down what we call the system. And, so I know like the Queen Mothers of Darkness are at the top, and then underneath them, you have this huge, when I was a kid, I knew it as the Satanic or the Druidic Council. Okay. And in that council group, I know there's over 300 people. I think at the biggest table or groups, I think they have gotten all 300 together at one time or another, but usually they meet on a regular basis in smaller groups. So the council breaks down into separate different councils. And so, you've got like the Council of 13, the Council of 21, the Council of 9, the Council of 5, I think is the smallest one. And so that Council of 13 usually is made up of the heads of the 13 bloodline families. Mm-hmm. As far as I understand, you have more than just one member, but I believe, that council does have, where it's the same family individual who's repeatedly tending to that. We call them seats when they sit in a seat. Some of the other, like for the bigger council, each family that holds a seat, like they could be a member of 13. For the bigger council meetings, they can have individuals who rotate in their family who kind of sit in the seat on their behalf. And the families, they can choose to, continuously rotate that person. They can choose one person from their group to sit for a term. So they kind of, dictate how often they're going to show up, but they are required at least 4 times a year. One of the things that, I tried to point out that was easiest to track who these individuals are, and you can even find the members for the Council of 13 this way, is that the Bilderbergs put up a participation list every year. And, it's my personal experience and opinion that the Bilderbergs are all councilmen. Mm-hmm. And you can track the rotations with that. You'll see like who the regular members are. Usually, probably at least for the past 10 years or more, you'll find Jacob Rothschild's name on there. That meant, he sits on one of the higher councils and he's regularly at those meetings. So, you can track from which country who the councilmen for those quadrants are by watching those lists and keeping track of those names and the heads of the country we're representing and the businesses that are representing. The Council of 13 kind of, I'm trying to think how to break it down. They do break down based on the family lines. It's not as easy to explain as people might think, because the ushering in of the New World Order has many different aspects to it. And so you're dealing with the ancient dragon bloodlines when at least that's what they call them, our dragon bloodlines. So, like you have the blue dragon family, which is the Rothschild family. And, their job is to oversee the economic things for the quadrants that they're in charge of. So That is going to include the businesses, the banks, the corporations, and, they're going to get all of that ready and oversee people and individuals who will get that part of the economy ready for the new world order. So it's not like you've got one person who's in charge of all the economics or all the finances. They're going to break it down and kind of rule or have their authority that way. I think that's why I, compare them to a board of directors. That's probably the easiest way to explain who they are and what they do. And in regards to the system and their positions within the system. This doesn't include any of their ritual or any of their quotas. It could, you may see some of their humanitarian efforts that come out in that would come out in their relationships with the businesses, the banks, the countries that they align themselves with. So those sometimes can be their humanitarian quotas that they're having to oversee. Example would be like, Oprah works hand in hand with South Africa. George Soros worked hand in hand with the education system and had, huge trusts and funds that were set up to, give scholarships and money to certain students. So
are these students going to be recruited into something down the line? There's got to be a price. Satan doesn't give you anything without wanting something in return. So their humanitarian efforts have to come with a price, right?
That's right. So, if you think about it at the deeper level, we've been bringing about some of the truths. What did they do with these educational funds? Why does Satan consider it an acceptable quota? On the outside, it looks like they're just raising money, that they're, lifting up students, and they're, targeting third world countries where, education is not as readily available to kids who are of a low economic status. So it looks like, hey, they're giving these kids a future and a hope, okay? But behind the scenes, what's really going on at these private schools that they're funding and giving these kids scholarships to, there's been stories surfacing at some of the ones in South Africa, of young girls talking about, that they were impregnated for ritual. They gave birth during rituals. The babies that they birthed were sacrificed. So, that's the real cost or price, is that, Satan gets paid back through sacrifices and death of children. And, some of these schools are, in essence, breeder programs. It's easy if you have a student all year long to get them pregnant and to have them give birth before they go home. And in fact, because sometimes with these sacrifices, they, will birth babies early, premature. Some of these girls give birth to a year. So
they get impregnated, and are they told in advance that their babies are going to be sacrificed after they're born?
I can't say that that's usually the case.
Okay.
I think that's really individual.
Situations?
Yeah, there are some witnesses or, who've come forward who do say that that's the case, that they were threatened that from the beginning. And, they would try to get out or save the baby before that would happen and stuff. But I don't think that's always the case. I think, the majority of them end up in a situation where they try to hide it.
Yeah.
Because they don't know how they're drugged. They don't know how they got pregnant. They're not having memories of the rituals. So they're kept in that state where it's, some of them may not even remember or know until years later, when the memories and the flashbacks come back, that was their experience.
I have to assume, since you mentioned Oprah Winfrey's name, that she must be a member of this.
She is,
Yeah.
yes.
Wow.
I've come out. My experience has been her as a high priestess, um, out of Chicago area originally, or I should just say I experienced her in that area, and then I know she worked under George Soros and was in charge of humanitarian efforts with him.
Humanitarian. It's such a contradiction in terms, isn't it? I mean, when you really
Well,
think about it.
well, think about that. The Masons, the Brotherhood, what is one of their main terms when they take vows and their oaths and everything? It's that they are to show charity. And, even the Jesuit Catholics, they use that word a lot instead of love. They will change that word in the new, use it out of the New King James, show charity to your fellow man. So, yeah, it's quite the play on words, I think.
Incredible. What do you know about the to switch topics just a little bit? This discovery in Canada of all of these children graves, thousands of graves of these children at residential schools that were run by the Catholic Church. I remember talking with Kevin Annette, who you may know, a couple of years ago about this, and I'm trying to get him back on the program again because at the time nobody was listening to him. He was talking about this, and it was nowhere on anybody's radar, and all of a sudden it's been confirmed, and these bodies have not even been exhumed and examined or identified, and it's just a horrific thing. What do you know about this, if anything?
Yeah, we just had him on Right on Radio the last couple weeks. So we have 2 shows out with him. If people go to Right on Radio on YouTube or on Podbean. So he was giving updates, and I guess that they have formed groups that are doing their own tribunals. They are calling to account individuals in the schools. There have been groups that have been revealing more of these sites. So, I've been encouraging some of those working in our country to, really be looking at the mass grave sites that we have here.
Yeah.
With the Catholic schools and the Jesuit schools and the different, you've got the Indian burial mounds have been a place where they often use those for hiding children in cages and holding grounds until, it's the time for the ritual. So there's a lot of correlation between, the land and, the catacomb-like mound-like burial ground systems that they've been using for years in their operation to, traffic, abduct, hold kids until ritual.
When you hear all of this stuff, you begin to wonder, is anything I've ever been taught or anything I've ever been told about the world real? Because we seem to be living in you've heard of the Matrix. We seem to really be living in a nightmare world where everything that you would think you would be able to trust, your church, your schools and everything is corrupted by Satan. How do you fight something like that? And for example, would it be safe to say that the Roman Catholic Church is involved with this Council of 13? Has the Pope sat on this board?
I would say that is my experience, that we have had popes sit on there.
Wow. I mean, would you suggest that people, I know we've talked about churches before and how to vet a church and that sort of thing, so we'll probably do that again somewhere down the road, but would it be safe to assume that one of the should people who are Roman Catholics, for example, should they fight to reclaim the church, or should they leave the church and go to another denomination of Christianity and because this is so corrupt?
I'm a total fighter. I say fight like hell for the church. Evict Satan and his cronies out of there. It's time for us to not give them a place to continue to participate in their evil acts and deeds. And the only way to ensure that they're not going to be able to use it for that is if we take it back. And, there are good Christian people who are Catholic and, or who are in these churches. And, I encourage people, know your pastor, know your priest, to like really, really get to know them and, test their faith. With my pastors, every week I'd be checking in and saying, hey, where does the Lord have you in scripture this week? And mine, at least, I know that they were reading the word, but that's a really good question. If you don't know your pastor well, start talking to them, see what they're reading in the Bible, ask them, what God's putting on their heart about that passage. And that tells you if they're really, reading it, if they're really praying through it. If they can't give you those answers to those questions, then you start to know something's not right, or, ask them what their prayer needs are. Ask them, I always lift up my pastor's personal prayer needs, and, we'll talk to him about the things that are going on. And at the same time, I know that my pastor prays for me too. And that's, one of the biggest ways you can know where their relationship with God is. And don't be afraid to ask about that. If you've got a pastor who can't tell you about a single experience they've ever had with God, there's a question there in my mind. Not everybody can talk about an experience, but everybody who has come to the Lord should be able to talk about a time when, God has done something in their life that they experienced him through. If they can't, and they've never had that personal experience, then, I have questions.
You've mentioned, one of the things to ask is what of your pastor is, what Bible passages did you read this week? I mean, in other words, see if they're really in the Word, if they're looking at it, as opposed to just standing up and spouting off in a sermon every week about something that maybe is not biblically based at all. Do you think that it is a part of the church's responsibility to get involved in social issues and politics and that sort of thing, or should they steer clear of that?
I do. I think really the enemy took away the church's voice back in 1947 with the Johnson Act, where churches became a 501c3. And that's when, they started being, it was dictated how much they could be involved or what they could talk about or speak on. And, it really is our government. It's the people of this new world order who are putting that censoring on the church. We should be involved at a very deep community level with our governments. We should know who's sitting on our local legislative branches, our mayors, our governors. These are people we should, have over at our house for dinner and intimately know. We should know what is important to them. What are they fighting for us? What laws are they passing that affect our children, our veterans, our communities? And I believe that pastors should be, in those city council meetings. You should be attending those and knowing what's going on. And, as a church, we should be talking about those things. If we sat in those council meetings and we knew what was going on, and, those are matters that we could pray over. Those are things that, if it goes against what we believe, then, we should be showing up at the next meeting and vocalizing our opinions, not just, our opinion, but our, you need to have, I'll just say, research, backup, or supports for your arguments in these meetings. You don't want to just show up and just give an opinion. Right. You want to give a opinion that is going to have supports and persuade people to make good decisions.
Those people that just show up either Sunday mornings or Wednesday evenings, because I know a lot of churches have 2 services a week, one on Sunday and one on Wednesday, but don't do anything else, any other participation. Is it incumbent upon them to get more involved with their local church community, try to get on a church council there, sit in with the pastor and the leaders and get more involved in the ministry?
I think so. From what I'm understanding you saying, you're kind of asking the opposite now. Should government people, are you saying those who are not?
No, I'm just saying people who go to church. In other words, all they do is go once a week, hear the sermon, blah blah blah, and then they go. And then they're amazed or flabbergasted when they find out that their pastor is preaching something that is total anathema to church teaching. Don't you think it's incumbent upon them to get more involved with the church and find out who their pastor is, sit in on some meetings, and be involved so that they know they can influence and know what is being taught and what the church's mission is? And I'm talking about that local church, not the church in general, but maybe their local church.
Yeah, I do think we have that responsibility to be engaged and involved. And, most of the time, what happens in churches, especially the larger ones, is that you've got a board of directors who sits in between the church parishioners and the pastor.
Right.
And the board is what dictates, what the pastor does, what he can do, and they kind of speak as the voice of the people. If you're just going and you're trusting everything to this board of individuals and you haven't, vetted them, you don't really know them, you don't know where their relationship is with the Lord.
They got on that board, for example.
Right.
Are they elected, or do the parishioners elect them? Well, I've never in any church I've ever belonged to had anything to do with how people got on that board. How do they get on that board?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, I went to a church literally where we would have votes, and they would bring the agenda and everybody got a voice, and, and everybody got a vote on the different matters. And we did vote, they voted in who would be on the board overseeing the different ministries for the church. So those people had to be nominated and then voted on. So I did see it operating that way. And I think that's a good way. It is you've got an accountability system there, and those people had to, whoever, was elected or on that board, whatever areas they were overseeing, they had to give monthly reports.
Yeah.
And those would be read to everybody in the church, those updates, what was going on. And,
Wow.
so I've seen it operating and functioning as it's supposed to. I can't say that happens in every church, but, if you've never experienced that in your church, I would encourage people to, ask your pastor and be like, hey, do we have meetings that I can attend and, where I can see what's going on with this, and how do we elect our board members, and what are the, a lot of churches will have policies, procedures, or protocols for these things. So you should be able to ask to see those. So you understand how your church is functioning. And then, you should be able to somehow hold to account,
Yeah, I agree. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I've just never experienced that, but I figure that it should be such a thing. I mean, I've been involved with men's groups at the church and that sort of thing. And so, I mean, it's not, and our pastor was a part of that group and everything, but I never knew, we didn't have anything like an election where someone would either send out literature, put it in the church bulletin, campaign, if you want to call it campaigning for, why they should be elected. I've never experienced that.
Yeah, we've never had that. They did it, it wasn't ever, I think they would send out like an email just saying, it's that time of year for the board members. If you have a nomination, please email the pastor. And then, then we would have like a meeting. Usually they would do like a brunch after church, and we would all be sitting in a room together, and they would say, okay, like these are the nominations for, the children's ministry board member, and these are the nominations for the maintenance crew board member, and then it would just be all, usually I don't remember there ever being more than one. But it would just be, if you are in agreement, say yay. If not, say nay. And, they would just go from there like that. But yeah.
We talk about the Netherlands a lot in this program. I have a couple questions, but before I get to that, can you give us an update on what's happening over there?
There has been, I guess, a lot going on. I don't have an update. Our ministry partner over there, Marion, has had some family stuff going on and been dealing with that. So we've just been supporting, and I could ask, if people will continue to keep our Netherlands team and Marion in prayer. That would be great.
Absolutely.
There's a lot in that country going on, especially with the vaccine, and yeah.
I recently found out that there was actually either a Dutch prime minister or some leader within the Netherlands who was calling for legalized pedophilia in that country, and that there was also a foundation in the Netherlands in which they have a pedophile manual. Do you know anything about that?
I did see those articles going up as well. I was trying to remember if I saw a second one that went up that said that they did. I think they legalized the age down to 10. So I think that part did pass. But I wasn't able to follow up on that fully the last couple of weeks. So if people look into that, I do believe they did just make it age 10. And their excuse was that, this is that it's supporting, I forget the way they exactly put it. It was something like, these are ancient, old cultural norms, and, it's okay as long as that's been that culture's norm. So, they make it, instead of saying that children are getting raped by adults, children are getting put into arranged marriages where they get raped by adults, children are getting sold by their parents at a very young age into, marriages where they get raped by an adult. They're saying that this is a cultural thing, that it's okay because now, this child is married, and so that marriage certificate somehow makes what's happening okay. And the truth is that they're downplaying what really happens in these marriages. As a chaplain, let me share a circumstance. This was a little different, but I'm just going to make it comparable so people can understand. We had a situation with incest of a 10-year-old girl that was pregnant. So imagine a 10-year-old having to give birth to a child that's 8 pounds. Imagine the complications.
Mm-hmm.
One, they haven't even gone through puberty yet, so their hips are not even widened. The toll that carrying a baby takes on a child that young, where their spine and, they're not all of their bones are fully formed yet. Some of them, their growth plates, they're still growing. So the extra weight, the extra things that happen to their body, are not normal, and that causes lasting effects. And then, because their body isn't even prepared for birth or giving birth yet, there's medical procedures and things that have to be done in order to remove that child from the womb, so that that 10-year-old and the baby can survive the birthing experience.
Yeah.
So, that's just kind of in a very light way putting out there all the things that, really happen. And, for some of these kids where this is a cultural norm thing, they don't even have trained professional medical hospital or staff there to assist them. So, what are the chances of complications? They're pretty high. And what are the chances of that child's 10-year-old surviving the birth of a baby on their own? That's not very high. So, it's really, how could any adult, just for the sake of saying that, they want to be married to a child, say this is not abuse?
Yeah.
It is a form of abuse, and no 10-year-old is ready to be a parent. There's a lot of things that come with that. So, think of all that responsibility being put on that young of a child. That's a lot.
I'm really afraid, and I've never asked you this question, but with the push by a lot of these fringe groups, which are invading the LGBTQ community, like these, what do they call, minor attracted persons and all this, who they want to latch themselves on to the LGBTQ community. And a lot of the LGBTQ doesn't want anything to do with them because they already got enough problems of their own, and they really don't want to be associated with hurting children in any ways. I mean, so we're not going to lump the LGBTQ community in with this. But with that pressure being put on it, and with a lot of these cultural norms appearing to change because our society is changing day by day, with teaching kids transgenderism in kindergarten and all that, do you foresee a time when we will really have to worry about the real possibility that pedophilia will become normalized here in the United States?
I think we're certainly heading down that road. But, what's sad is that, this has been going on for generations, that, there's been a deception that has been occurring, with these family bloodlines for years, where, they don't have real marriages. They have children that they abuse and molest and groom, to feel that they're the opposite sex. They would allow them to fully, transition and be like that. And then they, propose it as a marriage, and they adopt kids, and, they continue the cycle going. And I think, I don't know if it will come out, how many of the individuals in the face front, who have been, in the public eye as, these are wonderful married couples, It'd be interesting to find out how many of those are true, man and woman marriages. I think that we're going to find the opposite, that it's been a way that they've hidden for years, the homosexuality, the transgenderism, the different things, and they've allowed that, they've placed before us an image of what we want to see, so that we would promote and applaud and, encourage and give them kudos. But behind the scenes, really, it was all a lie, and they deceived us.
My concern is all these kids being, rescued from trafficking and everything else. All of a sudden, that will go by the wayside if enough people are able to convince the politicians in Washington, many of which have already been corrupted, to legalize this. Oh, let's just make it all, whatever, as long as the kid consents or whatever. And of course, the kids don't know any better. In many cases, they're not mentally mature enough to handle anything like that whatsoever. But they'd find some way to work around it. And then what happens to the kids who are, being trafficked in the system, who are being groomed, who are being abused and killed and all this stuff. A lot of the ball gets dropped because of that. I really have a fear that something like that is going to happen. I hope I'm wrong.
I think the grooming is a huge, aspect of this. And, when I last had seen the manual, I believe that you can still access it on the dark web. I don't encourage people to go on there, but you can obtain a copy of that manual. You also can see they now have videos that they put out where literally it is adults grooming children, and you can tell, we call it in chaplaincy, you're not allowed to, give leading questions when you're talking to people, especially in the mental health aspect. So, like I'm trying to give an example of what I saw in these videos. You would have an adult, talking and having a conversation with a child about sex. And, the adult was saying to the little 6-year-old girl, well, why don't you tell people, do you enjoy touching yourself, and you're a free, you're a woman, and you are, you understand your sexuality, what you like and what you don't like. Okay, this is leading.
Yeah.
And then they're talking to the child about it, and they're like, well, why don't you tell them what you like? Well, my question is, why is a 6-year-old able to tell me what they sexually like?
Right.
Okay, this is not a conversation a child should be having. No. It's not normal, and we really need to put a stop to it, instead of, they're kind of pushing it at that level, even where, children should understand or know their sexuality. Well, should they? That's my question.
Yeah.
I don't think they should until they're getting ready to start those relationships and be in a marriage relationship, early teens, adulthood. That's when these things should be coming out, not when, you're 6 years old. And
it's even 5 now.
Yeah. I mean
I was telling the viewers yesterday about a website called teacherspayteachers.com, which has a whole curriculum lineup for teachers who want to expose kids to this, gender studies as young as 5 years of age, as well as other things too, like critical race theory and all this kind of stuff. And fortunately, we're starting to see some parents go to these school board meetings and raise hell about this, saying, wait a minute, I don't want my kids being taught about masturbation at age 5. It's bull. And they're really the school board poo-poos them and say, oh, whatever. But it's really happening. If you see this, go to that website. You can see the whole curriculum, manuals, and everything is on there. Teacherspayteachers.com. And I encourage my viewers to go there and make sure that your children in the public schools are not learning this. I'm sure they're not in the private schools, but I could be wrong. But it's very frightening what's happening to our children these days.
Yeah, we need to take it even farther, because in order for there to be research and suggestions on what is appropriate to teach children, think about that. Who's doing the research? Who's getting the information? These people need to be held accountable, because somewhere along that line, in order to get the research, they have test subjects. So I want to know, what children are they experimenting on to get this research, and what are those kids having to go through? We should be going back to those, I don't even want to call them what we classify as professionals, but that's really where it's coming out of. And the majority of the time, I think that we're going to find it linked back to a lot of these big name research institutes, like the Aspen Foundation, MIT, Stanford University. These are the same organizations that I have brought out that were involved in the experiments when I was a child. So, who do they go back to? They go all the way back to Tavistock. They go back to, Mengele. Mengele's second hand in command, literally was married to one of the Aspen. Well, I guess I can't say married. He was in relationship and had a child with one of the Aspen families. So, Tavistock, Mengele, all these people were working in conjunction with each other, to basically make us guinea pigs, to continue their sick. We'll just put it as it is. What is behind all of this sexualizing of our children? It's so that they can use our children in sex magic.
Yeah.
And they're finding ways to promote it without it seeming like it's occultic or serving Lucifer. But that's what it's about.
Absolutely. Wow, that's pretty frightening. All right, let's take some great questions for Jesse, and we will begin with the gentleman by the name of Michael, who has this question for. Well, he's got quite a bit here, but we'll get to how much we can get to. He said he has a question about your visions. He said, how often do you get visions, and do you ever feel that the adversary can give you false visions? Scriptures state that most visions people receive now are not from God. Please let me know.
That's a really good question. We are supposed to test things like that. I guess I'll put it this way. There are false visions or false dreams. So when I get things like that, I will pray and ask the Lord, and I'll seek him and say, Lord, show me the truth. Usually when I question, then usually it's not from the Lord. But then there's times where it's like, I know that it's of the Lord, and usually in those visions, the Lord is talking to me or interacting with me. And in John 10:10, his word says, my sheep hear my voice and they know me, and I know them. So, when it is the Lord, there's no question in your mind. There's no doubt. That the Lord is there. You're in his presence, and you know that what he's showing you is what he wants you to see. A lot of times he will give the interpretation or the reason for why he's showing it, or he'll say, ask me to reveal to you the revelation. So you do get to where I get a lot of shared visions where the Lord's given me other prayer warriors where we will see the same things, or we'll have the same vision where we're all interacting with the Lord and with each other. And it literally is a group experience. And so that's another way to validate it, is that you have, more than one witness who testifies to, what happened in that.
Yeah, and it's like when we talked last week about the difference between psychics and prophets, that you can discern if you're smart, and if you think about it, and if you pray on it, as you do, obviously, because you have this personal relationship with God, and you're able to tell, go through this in your mind, whether it's something that's coming from him or something that you really don't trust. And I have a funny feeling if you don't trust it, it's probably not coming from God. Sure. You have a way of knowing. Interesting. All right, thanks for that. We'll go on to another question by, let's see. This is from Wendy. She says, could you please, I've asked this question. Okay. Hi, Jesse. I listened to parts 1, 2, and 3 of your interview with Sarah Westall, which I found very interesting. I'm especially interested in the way to open gates through prayer and higher frequencies, as I believe God told me I'm to do this on my property and he will help me build. I was guided to it, being a concept a bit like the Temple of Solomon before he lost, I don't know what she's got a word, PLO5. Does that mean anything to you? PLO5, PLO5, anything like that? Or is that a mistype? I don't know. Using harps like Daniel did, and maybe other instruments like shofars, tambourines, and maybe even trumpets to bring the mist of God. I've been told to name the place the same as on the hill mountain God appeared to David. Can you please provide me with any information about this?
Yeah, I'll say opening the gates is not just something that we can do. They have to be open and closed according to God's will. So the first thing I would encourage is that, if it is God's will, which, it sounds like the Lord's been leading you to do that, then he will show you exactly how to do that and give you the means and the way to do it. So that would be my encouragement, is to seek the Lord.
Okay, that sounds good. From Mike and Heidi, they want to know this. Actually, it's from Heidi, but her email address says, and she's got her own website too. My name is Heidi. I live about an hour north of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in Bucks County. I've been following Jesse online and various shows for about 6 months now. What an amazing woman of faith, resilience, and obedience. I have been working in my county on anointing the earth and taking back land for the Lord. I also have a blog that I'm wanting to build as the Lord gives me topics to share about. What I'm wondering is, I heard Jesse and Jeff talk about how the deep state and the dark side go after intellectual property. I'm wondering if sharing strategies and or insight on a blog hosted by WordPress could be construed by the enemy as an intellectual property and therefore have rights to it. If so, if there's any way to combat that. It may sound silly, but that's her question.
Yeah, no, I understand the concern. I don't know all of the legal aspects of that, but there has been a huge, I don't want to use the word danger. I guess anything that you put out there, the enemy can try to get a hold of. So we really need to be in prayer. We need to be trusting the Lord, only putting things where the Lord wants us to put it. But ultimately what it comes down to is the trust, that the Lord has the ability to guard and protect everything that you put out there. The enemy can access anything. So you just really have to be praying and trusting in those matters.
Yeah, I mean, and anyone can construe something that you write or say or present. They can twist it, they can edit it, they can do whatever they want to do. It's an uphill battle, but that is what we are commanded to do, I believe. I'm on a mission. Jesse's on a mission for what she does to get the word out, and we take chances every day that something that we say is going to be twisted or misconstrued. I mean, poor Jesse's been under attack for months now by certain individuals on Twitter and other places, and they're constantly writing me and saying, I have this question, and they're trying to get me to ask you certain questions to trick you or whatever, and I just ignore it. I mean, I'm not even going to go there, and I know that you've experienced this same sort of thing, and no matter what you do, there's always going to be somebody who's against you, and all you can assume that if that's the case, if they invest that much of their time and effort into it, they must be coming from a dark place, because nobody would if they believed in what you're saying. One of the greatest sayings that Jesus ever said was, even if you don't believe in me, believe in the work that I do. So if somebody has a question about Jesse's motives, which we know are pure as the driven snow, but even if you don't believe in Jesse, the work she's doing is enough to speak for itself. Right. And there's no reason.
And I'm human. I mean, I'm human. There's going to be times I'm going to make mistakes, or I'm not perfect. But
exactly.
What I do is I do pray. I ask the Lord. I go where He leads.
Yeah.
If I make a mistake, I talk about that.
Yes, you do.
So.
But I haven't seen too many mistakes. I haven't seen too many mistakes. Everything that you've ever said has been verified, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm just throwing that out there to say that no matter what people do, I mean, you can be perfect. They're going to find a way to attack you, and there's no way to avoid it. All you can do, you can either ignore it, you can fight it, and if you fight it, in many cases, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. The thing is to go on with your mission. Jesus has a plan for you. You're doing it. You just stay on course. That's all we can really do, I think. Erica wants to know, how can we find out which entities are assigned to attack us?
You can ask the Lord, but I find it, you know, I've been in battle for a long time, and the majority of the time, I don't even try to ask unless I know and recognize which spirit it is. If I know who it is, then I will rebuke them by name and cast them out by name. But the majority of the time, whatever's attacking me, I just, say, evil spirits, in the name of Jesus Christ, I rebuke you. And, I guess the danger that happens when you're trying to, or I guess, let me think how to put this in a better way. There's a danger in trying to sit there and figure out every single name or every single being. You're tempted then, as you call them out by name, these spirits are going to argue with you. They're going to fight for their right to be there, for their right to attack you, which then gets you in this position where you're now conversating with an evil spirit and arguing with them, instead of just standing firm and saying, I don't care who you are, get out of here. You've got no rights, no grounds, end of story. So that's where I just go to, rebuking them straight up. And, I don't take the time. I don't, because it just wastes your time. The goal is that if you're being attacked, you need to immediately stop that attack and stand firm. And, if you're sitting there trying to figure out, well, what spirit's attacking me, I need to know their name in order to cast them out. They've got you in a place where you're just dilly-dallying and they're continuing to attack you, and you haven't dealt with them yet. So
how many different demons are there? How many different entities are there?
Well, as scripture talks about it, there was myriads upon myriads upon myriads of angelic beings, and a third of those fell. Solomon only named 72 of the high-ranking ones. So if you think about, each of those has, I would say at least thousands or thousands upon thousands. I call them little chicken shits underneath them.
I like that. I rebuke you, you little chicken shit.
That's exactly it. It's like, those little guys, they're like little imps, and they're annoying. It's like this whole flock that will just come in at one time, and you're like, what the heck?
Yeah.
So, so usually, though, I don't even deal with them. I go straight for, whoever's the demonic, whoever's the general, that's in prayer who I'm targeting, where I'm saying, evil spirits, I'm coming against you. I'm going against the generals. I don't even, and when they fall, all their little chicken shits flee, because they have no authority, no power, no dominion. They have no legal grounds to be there, and if it's really a matter of legal grounds, usually I just go straight to the throne room, because usually Satan's up there trying to get some sort of right, and I will go straight to the throne room and say, okay, Lord, Satan's attacking my finances, he's attacking my credibility, he's attacking my relationships, and that's going against the restraining order that I've put against him. He's got no right to attack me. And Lord, if there's anything impure in my life, show me that I can confess it right now before you. I will bring it before you. I will confess it. I am willing to lay it down. I don't want any of that stuff in my life. I don't want Satan to have any grounds to be doing these attacks. And
don't hold anything over my head.
That's right. So, I'll do that. And then, I do believe that we have the right to claim our treasures out of darkness. The Lord says that, that he will return sevenfold what's been stolen from us.
Yeah.
So, I will ask for that too. It's like, okay, not only am I asking you to to enforce that Satan stop attacking me with his minions, but I am asking for my sevenfold return. You know, because he's attacked me, now he needs to pay the sevenfold price, you know. And when he doesn't, I go up there and continue to ask, Lord, enforce that he pay the sevenfold price. He needs to give a return to me for all the hell he's caused in my life. And, you know, I've asked for specific return. Yeah, I've asked for specific return, you know. So it's like, you know, right now I continuously ask for the generals out of his army that I've requested for to be hand delivered to my door, you know, in good health, in good shape, ready to come out and to serve the Lord.
Absolutely. You know, you mentioned something. We hear this. You know, we talk about the significance of numbers in the Bible and in a number of different things like 666 and all that sort of thing. The number 72 comes up a lot. You just brought it up again with regard to the 72, and then of course the Islamic people believe that if they die in a holy war, they get 72 virgins. Is there a significance to the number 72 that I'm not aware of?
There is. There's a lot of different significances. You know, I was trying to think how to, I think maybe that's a topic we should prepare and talk on.
Okay. Let's.
Yeah, because I have to think of a way to present it where, especially when you get into the connections with the Solomon and the leagues of angels and the hierarchy, people are really drawn to the dark side with that and wanting to test things out. So I want to present it in a way that won't lead people down that path with that.
All right. Well, keep that close to you, and let's do it next week if we could, because you just raised something that's come up before, and I was going to ask you about it in a different context, and then when you raised it just now, it came to mind. So I'll write it down on my end so that's one of the things that we talk about next week, and we'll let you just kind of go to town with it. So Charity wants to know, she says, my daughter was abused sexually, emotionally, and psychologically by her older brother since she was quite young, as well as by a satanic group she fell in with when she was about 14. She has developed DID, struggled with suicidal ideology and self-harm most of her life. She's been in and out of mental hospitals for 2 years and gone to counseling for about 5 years. She will be moving to Sioux Falls later this summer. I'm wondering if you have any recommendations regarding any counselors, that sort of thing, that might be of help to her.
I don't have recommendations in specific areas, but you know, some of the things that I'll just talk about, you know, my own experience, which didn't necessarily include the DID, but did I have people with that in my life? I did. So with some of those individuals, you know, we walked through Neil T. Anderson's book, The Bondage Breaker.
All right.
And that one is very good. I love that it focuses on, you know, it starts kind of with cleansing, where he has lists of different occultic things that you may have been involved in or that you may have dabbled with. And as you bring those things before the Lord and confess them and confess your involvement in them, you begin to break off ties that a lot of times demonic attachments happen through. And then as you get further into the book, you know, you're starting to break those demonic attachments. You're working through the process of forgiveness of others who may be involved in that, in your life situation or your life journey. And that's where you're going to start to experience some of that breakthrough and that healing. And, you know, I encourage people that if you go through books like that, you know, if there's things that all of a sudden you're like, oh, I never participated in that, or I don't need to confess that, you know, usually that indicates a stronghold. I found out the enemy wants you to breeze over it, to skip over it, to forget about it, not bring it before the Lord, because there's something hidden there. And so those would be the areas where I would spend more time. You know, I would be praying and saying, okay, Lord, show me, you know, is there a demonic stronghold here? Is this a foothold the enemy has? Show me if there's anything, that's hidden from my sight where the enemy has a foothold. And, that's where you're going to start to get the victory. And what's the other? There's another one that you can get free access to the PDF online. It's called Unbound. That one also is very good, and it's very similar, similar process to the Neil T. Anderson one. And those, I would encourage. I'm not saying, to anybody, please don't stop if you're seeing a counselor or an individual who's helping you with your mental health issues. But some of this you can do as added. Even I would encourage you to bring these books to them and discuss the things through them. I think with, especially if you're, in the mental health arena, one of the biggest areas that they miss that I believe is, vital to the healing process is they miss the area of cleansing, of confession and repentance. And there's something in that process of, confessing and turning away from sin and evil that even if you were just an observer of it, that's vital to the cleansing. And that cleansing gives way to, being able to really address some of the deeper things. Because that, if you haven't experienced that cleansing, what I've tend to see is that people hang on to the emotional, the guilt, the shame, the unworthy feelings, and those negative feelings are, keep you bound so that you can't deal with those deeper wounds. And so you've got deep wounds that just continue to fester. And, if anybody has done wound care, what happens to a wound that you leave untended or uncared for? It gets infection, it becomes gangrenous, and pretty soon, wherever that's been, you've got death, dead skin, dead muscles, dead tissue, dead limbs. And by the time that happens, if you don't remove it from you, you will die. So, I look at even emotional and spiritual wounds the same. If you leave them untended, it's just going to lead you to that place of death. Whether it's struggling with suicide, taking your own life, or, physical, because, there are physical complications that happen due to emotional stress or unhealth. So, it's important to tend and take care of our wounds. And let me think a way to put this. I think the enemy has kept a lot of us bound by believing that we cannot be part of our own healing process with the Lord. That we have to have someone else tell us, diagnose what the issue is, and we have to have someone else tell us how to treat that diagnosis. I'm a firm believer, and it's been my experience that when I sought the Lord showed me my wounds. The Lord also showed me what I needed to do to have healing from those wounds. And the majority of the time, the healer, the great physician, was the Lord himself. And as I surrendered to his healing, I wasn't just treating symptoms. I wasn't just, I think of all that I've gone through. My wounds, left me with complications like severe extreme nightmares, low potassium issues where, every time my heart would race because of the potassium drops, I would go into sheer panic because I literally in my mind, I was convinced I was going to die.
Yeah.
because that's what they would tell me whenever my heart would race. um, my body physically would, go into shock. And, so I look at these things. And so, what was the solution? You know, it wasn't just that I managed to get through the nightmares. Um, the Lord healed them, where, instead of all through the night, every night, now I might have, what I've had one in the past 7 years. And when I woke up, I was able to just, I rebuked the evil spirit that was causing the oppression of that nightmare. I started to speak the truth of the word of God. And, you know, and as I did that, I was able to go back to sleep in peace and, not have that nightmare affect me the whole rest of the day.
Yeah.
I did things too. My kids are really good. They were part of the healing process too, where, I had it's interesting talking about some of this, and hopefully I'm going to go further because I feel like there's someone out there who needs to know this. Um, you know, the trying to think how to put this. Because of, it, and I'm not trying to say that it's only certain people who have this spiritual gift or ability. We are spiritual and physical beings. And so, we are able to operate in a physical world. We're also able to operate in a spiritual world. And I would have situations where, a lot of times the enemy would, I'd get pulled into the spiritual realm at night when I was dreaming and would be operating in that spiritual realm. So it's not like it was just a dream. There were things that were happening in the spirit realm. Some of that, would be happening in the physical realm as well. So there were times, where I'd be dreaming about this bus load of kids in a foreign country. Actually, it was Russia. And, there was somebody on the bus with a gun. And, the Lord had me praying for those children, had me taking down that person with a gun. Well, the next morning I wake up and there's stuff in the news about this Russian bus with kids. And it was like, wow, okay, that was odd, and like, you can't explain things like that. But then there were times because of that, like the enemy, because I was physically asleep, like the enemy would paralyze me. So I would be stuck in these dreams. And that's when the enemy would attack with the graphic nightmares. And I physically could not wake myself up. And I would start, got to the point where I would start praying and calling out Jesus' name in my dreams. Well, I still wouldn't be able to wake up or get out of this dream. And so, I got to a point where when I'm in that state, I start to physically cry out. And that would signal my kids to touch me or to say my name really loud and wake me up out of that dream.
Okay.
Because I couldn't, get myself out of it. So if anybody else suffers from that, it is a spiritual attack, and, it does get taken care of through rebuking and things like that. And pleading the blood of Jesus in his name is what gets you through those attacks. But that was my experience with some of those things. So that, I went from where that was an every night, multiple times a night occurrence to, 1 in 7 years. And, the Lord didn't just, as I worked through it with him, and he taught me, about pleading the blood and calling out on his name during those moments, and rebuking. I'd rebuke the enemy before I went to bed. I'd proclaim the verses that, the Lord watches over my sleep, that I'm resting in him. And, the Lord didn't just, help me to deal with that, where it continued all night long every night, and then I just, would rebuke it in the morning. The Lord literally healed it so that, it's a once in a long time attack now.
Yeah. Oh, I can't imagine. I'm glad that these things come so few and far between. I can't even imagine how you're not still having this every night after what you went through. And to the woman who wrote to you, we'll keep you in our prayers. I can't imagine what it's one thing to have a child who is sexually abused and comes and says to their parents, I've been raped or whatever, and that in many cases that's an incredible, because of they feel that they've done something wrong, even if they haven't, the shame there. But then to have your own brother sexually abuse you and have to tell your mom, hey, he did this to me. And I just, it's unbelievable. Please seek help, as Jesse indicated. She doesn't have a specific person in your area, but reach out. And we wish you healing and the best. We're going to close with prayer, but before we do that, one more time, I want to promote this event coming up, not this weekend, but the next weekend. And of course, we'll have the opportunity to promote it again. Are you here next week, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll promote it again, but let's do it again. Fear into Faith Live, and it's going to be on the 10th and 11th of July in San Antonio, Texas. There's a great speaker lineup, and Jesse Zaboter is going to be one of the speakers. You can learn more at fearintofaith.com. You can get registered there if you're going to be in that area. Do you know if they're going to possibly stream this live at all or anything like that?
Yes, they are offering, I believe, they're offering tickets for people to see the live stream of it.
Okay, so there's if you can't make it to San Antonio, you can still get a virtual ticket for the virtual stream and watch this. And I highly recommend anyone who's had to deal with trafficking, if you've been in the system and that sort of thing. And we're going to try to find a way. I'm going to be contacting Summer and after the broadcast today and see if we can't sponsor at least one person to come there. I think it's important.
And all the funds are going to these women who are building the recovery homes. So even Summer and her husband are working on some of the teams where they'll be going to different areas and building the homes and stuff for these women. So it's all going for the trafficked women. Everybody else has donated time and things like that to make this event happen. And
excellent.
Yeah.
Anything we can do. That's
right.
That's awesome. All right. Let's close with a prayer, please, Jesse, if you'd lead us.
Yes. Heavenly Father, I just thank you so much for this time together. And I thank you for the great questions, Lord. And I just lift up all those out there today who might need help, Lord. There isn't a single one of us who haven't gone through something in life, whether it was a traumatic event, whether it was something that we had to endure over and over, Lord. But all of us have gone through these things that have left us broken and wounded. And your word says that you are the good shepherd. You are the one who tends to those wounds, not only tends to them, but you heal us. Lord, I've seen some of the greatest miracles, Lord, even to the full extent where a man who had a bad liver and had to get a transplant, you gave him that new liver with no complications, without needing any medications to suppress his immune system so his body wasn't fighting it. You literally restored to him a new liver. I've seen you grow back organs or limbs, Lord. And so, Lord, I believe that even the emotional wounds, even the sexual wounds, Lord, you are able to restore and make new so that we can experience those things as you created them, that you made all things good, and we are meant to have joy and rejoicing and delight in our lives. And so I pray that you would restore to us at those deepest levels a complete healing, and that we would not only be eyewitnesses to those healings, but that we would testify to them, and that our testimonies would encourage others. And that just as we have freely received, Lord, let us freely give that healing out And so I ask that this week that you would bring forward the witnesses, that you would bring forward the testimonies, that you would bring forward that giving and sharing with one another that creates a space of continued healing in your name, Jesus, and by the power of your blood. And so we just pray and ask for all these things in your name, Lord. Amen.
Amen. And please bestow healing and health upon Jesse as well. So thank you so much for being with us. We'll talk again next week, and we'll promote the event again when we have you back on next week as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless. Have a great week.
You too.
Bye-bye. Jesse Saboter of Illuminate the Darkness at illuminatethedarkness.com. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Peter Kirby, author of Chemtrails Exposed, the new Manhattan Project, will be joining us, and we will continue our deep dive into the chemtrail agenda. Stay with us.